Hey guys, welcome back. It's the start of the holiday season and I hope you're all spending it with those you care about. Today's topic, as you've probably gathered from the title, is about depression. Before I get into the meat of the video, let me just bring up that for people who suffer from depression, the holidays can be a very rough time. If you know anybody who may be at risk, or just haven't seen or talked to a friend in a long time, consider reaching out to them to make sure that they are okay. Now, with the PSA out of the way, let me bring up that I'm no doctor on the subject of depression, though I have struggled with it over the years. I am merely making some observations about Princess Zelda from the latest games. And let me tell you, this girl is depressed. She isn't just depressed though. I dare say she is even self-destructive. While I'm ultimately leading up to her behavior in Tears of the Kingdom, her journey in Breath of the Wild is important to go over, and so I will be making this video in 2 parts. Now kick back and relax, or at least try to, while I walk you through my analysis of depressed Zelda. Part 1. Childhood. To understand Princess Zelda as an adult, we must first understand her childhood. While we have to take Age of Calamity with a heavy grain of salt due to the incorrect placement of events, there are parts that we can take at face value. The developers were very careful to remove its events from the main timeline, with only 2 potentially being in the realm of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Its very first opening, where Terrako awakens in response to Princess Zelda using her powers, and this memory Zelda has late into the game.
Father, no! Please don't take it away!
The return of the Calamity has been foretold. As the Princess of Hyrule, your sole focus must be on your training. A toy such as this is merely a distraction.
Please! Please!
I'm sorry.
Her father took away from her a device that her and her mother had made together. She was only 6 or 7 years old at the time, and yet he felt that it was a distraction from her sacred duty, that she needed to focus on awakening her powers to face the Calamity. From an early age, immediately after the loss of her mother, she had the weight of the entire kingdom thrust onto her shoulders, and all without a proper teacher. As much as she had the curiosity to investigate the Sheikah technology alongside the researchers, she realized that it was a realm outside of what she would be allowed to do, no matter how much she would rather be a researcher instead of a princess. I think we can all understand her plight, relate to it, that in our lives responsibilities are thrust on us while we would much rather do other things. We can also understand and relate to the looming threat of failure. This was only made worse during her development, as while she struggled to make any of her sacred power appear, her father would become more and more stern with her. It's really telling that in both of their journals, that she would sneak away and engage in research while not training her sacred powers. It was her hobby, a desire, an escape, and perhaps that act reminded her of the time she spent with her mother. We can see from those early days how this primed her for severe depression. But it would only get worse when somebody much more skilled appeared, a boy that she would envy and grow to care for, her appointed knight, Link. Part 2. The Chosen Knight. We can't be sure how old she was when Link entered the picture. We know that he was part of the knights from an early age, that his father was a royal knight, and that he drew the Master Sword when he was still young. We can't be sure when that was, but creating a champion gives some implications. I like to believe that when he was training in the training grounds south of the Lost Woods, that one night the sword called out to him. He wandered through the fog, perhaps guided like we see in Skyward Sword, by a mysterious shrine maiden who led him to the sword. This video isn't about Link though. It's about the consequences of Link's appearance. For his pulling the Master Sword merely added evidence that the prophecy was true, that the Calamity was coming. In Link, Zelda saw a person who was much more on the path to achieving their destiny, a man who would live up to the expectations from his family, his kingdom, and above all else, her father. In the Ballad of the Champions DLC, we know that Zelda's recruitment of the champions happened before the knighting ceremony. It's possible that when Link pulled the sword, that was the act that led to reaching out to the 4 races and recruiting them. Perhaps Age of Calamity was correct that Link tagged along to protect her as one of those knights, but I don't think that is the case. I think that Hyrule was much more peaceful at that time. They weren't encountering hundreds of monsters between settlements. There were threats, of course. The Yiga clan would happily strike her down. Yet another thing that would weigh on her mind given that her mother may have been assassinated by them. Link's success and her duty to recruit the champions only added to the pressure she was under. If she failed to bring her powers forth, then all of these people she was growing attached to would be nothing more than sacrifices in a battle she couldn't win. It didn't help that her prayers to Hylia were met with silence. She prayed at both the springs of courage and power, apparently even collapsing there after hours of enduring the cold water. Her failure to awaken her power led to her leaving, sneaking away to engage in some recreational acts of research, all while avoiding her appointed knight. She would lash out at this man, question his skills in an attempt to make her feel better about her own inadequacies. It was only when he saved her life that she truly came to accept him as more than just her protector. This man she continued to push away would diligently pursue and follow her, and he was right to do so, because in this very moment, she would have died. Princess Zelda intended to go to the Spring of Wisdom as soon as possible, on her 17th birthday. Apparently the act was forbidden to go sooner, as a restriction to the location had been placed based on age. It was some idea about wisdom only coming to those who were at least 17. On that day, everything would change. The cracks in her facade that had built up over the last decade would finally cave, and Hyrule would enter its darkest hour. Are you enjoying the video? If so, a like and subscribe really helps out. I put out a video every week, and it's free. Now, let's get back to the theory. Part 3. The Calamity. After failing to awaken her power at the Spring of Wisdom, that very evening, the Calamity would emerge from under Hyrule Castle. We know what happened next. The champions went to their beast to fight the malice-corrupted guardians. It is then that the Blight Ganons would face the champions, costing them their lives, all while the kingdom was being overrun with the very machines intended for their protection. Having gone to Hyrule Castle with Link, Princess Zelda witnessed the horrors of this firsthand. Witness how the divine beast fell under the influence of the Calamity, as Link was taking Zelda towards Hateno for protection. That is when Zelda would break down entirely, in what is the most heartbreaking scene in the entire story.
Everything I've done up until now, it was all for nothing. So I really am just a failure. All my friends, the entire kingdom, my father most of all. I tried and I failed them all. I left them all to die.
Her breakdown is understandable. This was the absolute moment of collapse, when all of her fears came true. She had failed, her kingdom was in ruins, and her father was right to doubt her. We can read about his point of view in the journal in the castle, how he intended to embrace her with open arms and give her unrestrained freedom when she returned from the spring of wisdom. It is heartbreaking that this reunion never happened, no doubt only adding to her depression after the fact. We are getting ahead of ourselves, because something else would happen before the tide would turn. Link, her chosen knight, would die protecting her. Part 4. The Awakening. Perhaps it was praying at the final shrine that allowed her to tap into her sacred power. I certainly believe that was part of it. A prerequisite to tapping into her sacred force and tapping into the power of the gods. It wouldn't be the trigger though. That would be Link about to die to protect her. I don't think that it is controversial to say that she had fallen in love with him, though certainly there are those in the community that would argue vehemently that Link and Zelda are strictly platonic. Regardless of your beliefs on that topic, the outcome here is clear. Her desperation to protect him was the catalyst for tapping into that power. The guardians in the field fell into lifeless husk as their malice was snuffed out.
Was that the power?
Zelda's sacred power had awoken. Despite this though, she was too late. Laying at her side was Link on the verge of death. Her awakening had come too late, and now her protector was paying the price. All was not lost. The spirit of the Master Sword assured her that he could be saved, and so he was taken to the Shrine of Resurrection. If you ask me though, he did not survive this, and it was only because of the shrine that he was brought back to life. With her powers awakened, the kingdom in ruins, she knew what she had to do. She was not entirely reckless. She first took the sword to the Lost Woods so it could heal. She knew if she failed, only Link or somebody wielding the sword would be able to combat the darkness. She then went to the castle, and then confronted the Calamity. You have to realize this was a all-or-nothing assault. Maybe she could have been more strategic, pulled back to Kakariko or Hateno. Let's face it though, she was grieving over the loss of her friends, her father, and her protector. If you ask me, her assault on the castle may have been borderline self-destructive. She went there intent on winning, but thinking that if she failed, Link would have to save the day in her absence. To speak absolutely clearly, she may have gone there thinking she would die.
And thus, the kingdom of Hyrule was devastated absolutely by Calamity Ganon. However, the princess survived to face Ganon alone.
Link, you are our final hope. The fate of Hyrule rests with you.
The end result was a partial victory. She would become trapped within the Calamity itself, fighting it for 100 years while Link recovered. It was a struggle of her will against it. But in that struggle, she managed to bring peace to the kingdom. The machines would still be a threat, but no longer were they moving like organized units. Instead, they simply wandered, striking down whatever they found. As is stated in journals and dialogue in Breath of the Wild, the divine beast would go dormant and even disappear for a time. The castle, infested with monsters, would grow still, and for a time, everything would be quiet. Part 5. The Aftermath. We know what happened from here. Zelda's voice would finally awaken Link. He would travel around the kingdom, saving the souls of the champions, and putting right what was wrong in the settlements. As the hero gathered his power from the Sheikah shrines, monsters and guardians would fall to the sword that banishes the darkness. The princess would endure, hoping he would succeed. Of course, there was a problem with this, a creeping fear inside of her, that the man who was fighting on her behalf wasn't the one she cared for. He was hollow, his memories, what made him him, they were all gone. She had hoped that the pictures she took on the Sheikah's slate would stir his memories, would make him complete. She would worry that even if he found them all, would he really be the same person? Link stormed the castle. The Calamity would erupt from its gross cocoon, and the champions would rain down their fury upon it. Armed with the Master Sword, Link would destroy the monster, and the malice would assume its enraged beast form. Zelda had enough of her power to give Link the Bow of Light, and from within the creature made weak points appear that Link could destroy. When enough damage had been done to the Calamity, she could finally break free and eradicate it from the face of the planet. With their victory complete, she turned to face Link with her fear remaining. She asked simply if he truly remembered her.
May I ask, do you really remember me?
Even in saving the kingdom, or what was left of it, Zelda's concern shows. The thing that she was fighting 100 years for, the restoration of Link, was front and center on her mind. Breath of the Wild ends with Zelda having hope for the future. While her powers had faded, she wished to make amends for her failure, to rebuild, and to do so with Link by her side. Little did she know that the damage had been done. The damage to the castle would result in a much larger threat starting to stir. What the future presented was no longer an emergence of malice that could be controlled and fought back, but the source of that power starting to awaken. This isn't about him though. It's about Princess Zelda. She had endured a century of fighting. Her will versus the lingering resentment and anger that she couldn't fully understand. She did so thinking that she had failed her kingdom, her friends, her hero. The majority of her life had been steeped in regret over failing to save those around her, and failing to meet the expectations placed upon her by her father. So tell me, dear viewer, do you think that Zelda is depressed? I hope you will tune in next week for part 2, when I cover just how bad off she is in Tears of the Kingdom. Thanks for watching the video. Originally I wanted to do both parts in a single video, but the amount to cover in Breath of the Wild was a lot more than I realized. As such, part 2 will be coming next week. I hope you will all join me for that. If you have any opinions on Princess Zelda and if you think she is depressed, please leave a comment below and I will get back to you. If you haven't done so already, a like and subscribe really helps out around here. This channel is made possible by the generous support of my patrons. It wouldn't be able to keep going without them. If you happen to be in a position to help, consider joining it or becoming a channel member. Or if you want to pass on some Christmas cheer, a super thanks is always appreciated. If you join up, you will gain access to my Discord, where we can talk more directly about upcoming projects. I can get pretty chatty about this stuff, and there are a lot of ideas floating around in my head. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Be safe, and may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.